Ben's going to be with us today. He's one of the best and most important state party chairs in the country, and I'm really glad he's taken a little time to be with our community today. So let me tell you what, this is my just latest thinking about things, is that I want to start by going through and reminding everybody what our basic take was about what happened in 2022, because it's very important for understanding 2024. And that in 2022, there were two elections. There was a bluer election inside the battlegrounds, where all the money that we raised, because of many of you, created these muscular campaigns with unprecedented amounts of money that allowed us to control the information environment and push our turnout, up beyond what we can normally do because of the size of the campaigns that we had. And then inside the battleground, we actually gained ground, right? We gained in Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Minnesota, Michigan, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania. We got up into the 55 and above in a bunch of these states. Incredible performance in what was supposed to be a tough year for us. And it was the third consecutive election that we've had where we have litigated MAGA and Democrats have come out on top. Really incredibly important election results. But we also know what happened outside the battleground, where we didn't have these big muscular campaigns. We lost ground in New York and California, Florida and Texas. And the admonition to me is that we have to both, going forward, both run these big muscular campaigns that we have, but we also have to do more to win in the daily information war. And that's why we talk here about getting louder and being an information warrior for democracy. It's important topics for us, and it's based on the analysis of what we had. We are better than they are. We're winning elections. We've got a better agenda, but they're louder than we are, and we need to do more to close the gap on loudness. And so it's my belief, as I stated all the last 2 years, that it is going to be a problem for Republicans to run as MAGA in the battlegrounds. They've done it in 3 consecutive elections. It hasn't worked for them. And at this point, given the way that both Trump and DeSantis are positioning themselves, it sure looks like we're going to have a MAGA candidate. It could be MAGA squared candidate, ultra MAGA, super MAGA candidate, as both of them seem to be escalating their extremism as they compete with one another. And so to me, I think the central story of this election already is the continued ugliness of MAGA and the extremism of MAGA. I think even DeSantis is not only his anti-woke agenda, and the 6-week abortion ban and the permitless carry, and sort of this escalation of his extremism in Florida to get ready to run. Not only is that not going to sell in the battlegrounds, it's not selling in Florida. I mean, there's been public polling showing that 6-week abortion ban is in the low 20s in Florida, the permitless carry is in the low 20s. Even his school initiatives, which is so central to his whole identity, are only in the mid-30s. This stuff's unpopular even at home. And in the head-to-heads with Trump, right, we've seen in the polling in Florida, DeSantis is actually trailing Trump in Florida. So the question of whether this guy, I joke that we're about to answer one of those age-old questions in politics is, can you crash before you launch? Is that DeSantis, I think, has had a very rough time the last few weeks. He's not going to emerge. He could have become and decided to become like Governor Kemp or Governor DeWine, but he chose to be Marjorie Taylor Greene. He made a huge error, I think, in his positioning. And I think this story now, that it's not just one person who's driving the Republican Party off the cliff, it's now another one, and that we've got to lump DeSantis and Trump into a single entity of extremism, this amalgam of extremism that both of them represent, different aspects of it, right? And together, it's even uglier than apart. And I think that they've given us so much to work with. And it's why, one of my major projects this cycle that I want to work on with all of you is this idea of getting to 55 or strive to 55. We, from 1992 to 2004, we averaged 47% in presidential elections. And then this new electorate emerged in the 2006 cycle, the 2006 cycle. Hispanics, millennials, got to critical mass, and we ran towards this new electorate, and we had a great election cycle. But in those 4 presidential elections since 2006, when American politics changed and this new electorate emerged for Democrats, we've averaged 51%. So we went from 47 to 51, a 4-point jump. I'm hoping what we can do now, given the ugliness and awfulness of MAGA, the unrelenting ugliness and awfulness of MAGA, that we can imagine getting to 55, not just 51. And we need to really try to stretch our understanding of our politics, to expand our coalition, not just to win the election, but to crush MAGA, to have this feel like not just a narrow defeat, but a crushing defeat, the kind of defeat that can loosen the grip of this extremism on the Republican Party. This is not just a normal election, as none of these elections have been in recent years. It's why you've seen such an outpouring of grassroots support for Democrats and the groups that have been sprung up all across the country that many of you are involved in. Is because you're scared for your country, and people are stepping up and taking extraordinary steps to protect it, the way that regular people are in Israel, for example, over the last week. The fight they have in Israel is related and connected to the fight that we're having here. It's one of the defining fights of our lifetimes, perhaps, which is, can we make sure that democracy prevails over autocracy here and around the world, because it's under threat in ways that it hasn't been in a very long time. So I look ahead to 2024 in the current moment, and I would certainly rather be us than them. I'm excited about our opportunities. I think the country is better off under Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been a good president. The Democratic Party is strong. And we have to approach this next period, I think, with a sense of strength and power rather than repositioning. We have to expand. We've got to grow. We've got to get bigger. We've got to really roll the dice and go for it here, I think. And I think even just the reaction today to the shooting and the tragedy in Nashville, you can just feel, I think, in the national media right now, a growing sense of like, you got to be kidding me on the Republicans. Like, you guys are really going to focus on book banning as opposed to protecting kids from mass shooters. I mean, the absurdity of their politics feels like it's becoming more evident and salient in our daily discourse. It's maybe, I'm obviously not an objective party, but their response to this shooting, and even Liz Cheney today tweeted out an extraordinary tweet. She said, you know, maybe Republicans, if they want to protect kids, should be more worried about protecting them from gun violence than banning books in schools. I mean, just the absurdity of their politics right now and how hollow and extreme and ridiculous it all feels. I just don't feel like, hey, is that, I don't know if that's Ben himself or one of his team coming in, but let me see if I can manage this here. I might get myself back on here.
This is Ben.
Hey, Ben, you're early. It's amazing. Thank you. We're going to take you, Ben. I know how busy you are. I was just finishing up, Ben, and saying, I feel good about where we are. Republicans have let themselves on extremist fire. Joe Biden's been a good president. The country is better off. We need to be offensive minded this cycle, not defensive. And one of the ways that I know many of the people on this call today, and we have people watching on YouTube as well, is they're working, you know, wherever they are. They've been texting and phoning and giving money into Wisconsin. It's been kind of amazing how many of these grassroots groups that I've spoken to over the last few weeks, who as soon as I end, they talk about what they're doing to make sure they're helping you and win in Wisconsin. So welcome, Ben. Let me, are you going to be able to be on camera, or are you just doing audio today?
Well, it says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
How do I fix that, Ben? Let me see what I can do here. That would be bad. Give me a second. I am not an expert in these matters.
Or I could jump off now and then log back in.
I'm getting you on, man. You're here. Let's get you going, and then I can take questions. Yeah. Hold on. And you should have, try it now, Ben.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, there we go.
Awesome, man. Thank you. So listen, everybody, I'm really excited that Ben's been able to be here today. He's right in the thick of it. So I want to get going. Let's get a report on how you feel things are. And Ben, it's really important also that you give us instructions on what's the most effective way we can be helpful to you in the home stretch here. And I just want to say that Ben is, as many of you know, I've been involved with state parties for a long time. I'm a party guy. I believe in the DNC and the state parties. I ran for chair once a long time ago, and Ben is really, I think, an exemplar and a modern leader. We need lots of Bens out there, because he's not just an effective organizer, he's a powerful communicator. He's exactly the kind of guy that we need hustling for Democrats in what may be the most important state in the country in the next election, because the Republicans are holding their convention in Wisconsin in 2024, which is either going to make it much harder or much easier, Ben. We'll see how they perform, right? But, Wisconsin is going to be, job one for the Democratic Party next cycle. And Ben, I know you're running for re-election. Hopefully that works out and you're still at the helm of the party in the general. But give us an update on the Supreme Court race next week, and just thank you for all that you do for all of us every day, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Simon. And thank you for your tireless advocacy for a clear look at what's actually happening in the data, in the electorate, in the country, in a country where I think so many people in public life get spun by the GOP that is constantly trying to distract attention away from what the public actually cares about. And the fact that people's values align so much with Democrats that Democrats can win in these tough contests in states like Wisconsin. We saw this vividly in 2022, where you were one of the few folks pointing out that Governor Evers actually had a path to re-election, even though Democrats had never won a governor's race when there was a Democratic president since 1962. That was the last time that happened. So really excited to be with you today, 1 week out from Wisconsin State Supreme Court race. This has been called the most important election in the country in 2023. I think that only begins to describe how significant this race is for Wisconsin and for the whole country. So let me start with the stakes for Wisconsin. We have an abortion ban that was passed in the year 1849. After the Dobbs decision, the legal status of that abortion ban became an open question. And because of that, no hospital, no clinic is willing to risk their physicians being sent to jail for 6 years for performing a healthcare procedure. This law was written when women didn't have the right to vote, before the invention of modern medicine. It uses archaic language. No one is sure if it covers, for example, abortions performed in cases of miscarriage, where there's no path to a viable pregnancy, but where the technical term for the procedure is called abortion. And that means that women are left to bleed, left to face sepsis and serious, profound health conditions, not sure whether they can access the care that they need. You need two different doctors to agree that the life of the mother is threatened under this 1849 law before an abortion can be legal. It starts at 0 weeks. OBGYN practices are shutting down. Families are delaying or deciding not to attempt another pregnancy because of the risk of a high-risk pregnancy where they wouldn't be able to access the care that they need. It is profoundly frightening. You can't complete OBGYN training in Wisconsin right now because you actually have to learn these basic procedures. So you have to leave the state, and a lot of people don't come back. And of course, for anyone who needs to end a pregnancy for any reason, if they don't have the resources to get outside of Wisconsin right now, things can get very grim very fast. This state Supreme Court race will determine whether we have a far-right Justice, Dan Kelly is the guy's name, who advised Wisconsin Right to Life, who's been endorsed by the most extreme anti-abortion groups, who just spoke at an event with a kind of far religious right activist who signed on to a statement calling the murdering of abortion providers justifiable homicide. That is Dan Kelly in this race. We know exactly what he would do if he gets into office. He would say the 1849 ban is in effect. Or Janet Protasewicz, whose personal values, she's very clear, she believes in reproductive freedom. And also, she will fairly adjudicate the cases that come before her. And our attorney general and governor have sued and said that the 1849 law should not be in effect because other laws were passed after that obviously supersede it. So it's a basic legal question that the Republicans would ignore and continue to attack the rights of half of our population, or a path to reproductive freedom. That is the number one issue in this race for Wisconsinites. The number two issue for Wisconsinites is our state legislative maps, which are hyper gerrymandered, really beyond the pale. The Princeton gerrymandering projects, their analysis is that Wisconsin's legislative chambers have the biggest partisan bias of any legislative chambers in the country. In other words, if you stack up every legislative chamber in America, Number one is the Wisconsin State Senate. Number two is the Wisconsin State Assembly. It means that Republicans are within a hair's breadth of getting a supermajority in both chambers, even when Democrats win statewide. The margin that prevented Republican supermajorities in 2022, when we won the governor's race by 3.4%, was 2,499 votes, less than 1/10 of 1 percentage point across the state. And if we win the Supreme Court race, these maps could be vulnerable to a totally legitimate constitutional challenge because the right to vote is a constitutional right in Wisconsin. And it effectively nullifies your right to vote if your vote can't possibly change who has majority control of the state legislature. There's several other grounds as well that could be sued. So that is the effect for Wisconsinites, the chance to pull away from Republican supermajorities and actually become a democracy rather than a democracy desert, which is what one Harvard study called Wisconsin. But that's where it tips into national stakes. Because if Republicans get a supermajority in our state legislature, they could rig our rules even further to guarantee Republican victory or to overturn elections. And they have a more direct route to overturning election results. In 2020, Wisconsin was the only state that came within one person on the state Supreme Court of overturning the 2020 results. Dan Kelly had been on the state Supreme Court until the spring of 2020. He was appointed by Scott Walker. We defeated him in the spring of 2020. If he had won that year, he would have cast the tie-breaking vote to overturn Wisconsin's electoral college victory for Joe Biden, and that would have been the first domino to fall in the Trump coup plot. If he gets back on the court, we know exactly what he will try to do in 2024. So the state legislature creates its own threat to democracy. The state Supreme Court overturning election results is a threat to democracy. The state Supreme Court stomping on voting rights in a state where elections are routinely incredibly close. 4 of the last 6 presidential races have come down to less than 1 percentage point. That's a threat to democracy. In 2022, the state Supreme Court banned drop boxes entirely. And then we wound up losing our Senate race by 1 percentage point. This is the kind of stuff that can affect the White House in the tipping point state, the Senate when Tammy Baldwin's up for re-election, and going back to those maps, the gerrymandered House maps are part of how Republicans have their House majority. We are a 50-50 state where 6 of the 8 congressional seats are held by the GOP. So just having fair maps could mean we take away 40% of Kevin McCarthy's House majority. Even if Democrats don't win any district that is even a little bit right-leaning, if we had fair maps, that would be 2 House seats right there. So the House, the Senate, the White House, by extension, the U.S. Supreme Court, and by the way, this is a 10-year term. So whoever wins on April 4th will be on the state Supreme Court during the 2024 and 2028 presidential election and 2032 presidential election, when my 8-year-old daughter is casting her first vote. This is a long-term, major race happening in 7 days.
So how's it going and what can people do to help, Ben?
Okay, so right now, I think both sides would agree. Janet Protasewicz, the progressive candidate, is ahead. The question of how ahead is highly contested. Republicans have released a poll that puts her 2 points up in the margin of error. I think it's probably a little bit more than that, but I also know that we were 8 points up in 2019, a week from the election. And then we lost by 0.5 percentage point because the Republican machine started cranking up conspiracy theories and attacks, and it led to Republicans surging their turnout. So we need to not take this for granted. We need to treat this as though we're 0.5 percentage point behind and do everything we can to turn out voters. And everyone on this Zoom, all 126 participants on this webinar, can play a role in winning this race. The 2 things that you can use are time and money. And time is money, so maybe it's just one thing. You can volunteer. If you go to wisdems.org/phone bank, wherever you are in the country, you can call Democrats and tell them about this election and help make sure they're ready to vote. Even if you've never done this before, we will train you, and it is fun because you're calling people who share your values and telling them that they have this incredible opportunity to make a huge change just by casting a ballot. People will thank you for calling them, which is not normally what happens when you're volunteering in a political race. But I can tell you, it's happening all over the state right now. So volunteer, do those phone banks, and donate. In Wisconsin, the Republicans, when Scott Walker was the governor and Reince Priebus was the Republican Party chair, they changed the law to allow the state parties to receive unlimited contributions from individuals and provide unlimited support to state candidates, which means that the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, which I have the honor to chair, is right in the middle of this fight. The GOP is all in on supporting Dan Kelly. We have to fight back. And if you donate to wisdems.org, wisdems.org, then you can help power our work to ensure that Janet Protasewicz defeats Dan Kelly and that we pull democracy away from the brink in the state that tips the entire country.
And I had a question, Ben, is that somebody asked, how can we phone bank, this is Catherine, from our home on our own time, not as part of a group phone bank? Is that possible in what you just recommended with the Wisconsin Democrat?
We could set up a special phone bank for any group. We have full-time staff that just focus on distributed organizing, welcoming volunteers from wherever they might live. So if you email info@wisdems.org, we can make sure that that gets to someone on our team who can provide that help. We're delighted to be able to do that. Also, if you just go to wisdems.org/phone bank, you can see tons of different shifts and different times and places happening all the time. And so you can get involved in one of those directly as well. We would love to have all the help that folks can provide.
I'm going to do at least 2 shifts. And I actually love phone banking, and everyone should be aware that we're just calling Democrats here, right? So it's easy. And in many cases, as Ben noted, and I've done in the last several elections, I've done, 20 to 25 hours of calls into various races because I actually enjoy it. I like talking to people. People are grateful. Sometimes people are a little hesitant to call. It's calling strangers, a little weird, right? It's not that at all. You're calling Democrats. Many of them are grateful that you've reminded them, because if you're calling somebody, they haven't voted yet, right? We have the ability to pull people off the rolls. So the people who've already voted are off and, off the rolls. So you're just calling people that we still need to get them to go vote. So see if you can do a shift or 2 between now and next Tuesday. It could make a real difference. How's the early vote going, Ben? That's another question that came in over the chat. How are you happy with where the early vote is?
It is so good. This is one of the things that calms me down each day is looking at our internal state of the race report. I will share that right now we have 232,000 votes cast. And just by comparison, in the entire election in 2019, the one where we lost by half a percentage point, it was only 147,000 early votes cast. So we have way outstripped it, and we still have a week to go until Election Day. It is partly a sea change in how Democrats vote, but it, I think, also reflects the explosive level of turnout that we're likely to see. The issue here is we build up a lead with early vote, and then Republicans sprint to catch up on Election Day. And so even if we have I would much rather see a huge turnout in early vote than not seeing one. But even if we have one, it doesn't mean we can rest easy. It means we can focus our efforts on those hardest to reach voters who haven't cast a ballot yet. It's why, just to reinforce your plug for phone banking, it's why it makes such a difference, because everyone who we can get to cast a ballot early is someone we don't have to turn out in the final stretch. And that means that, in effect, let's say half of our voters have voted by Election Day. It's like we double the number of volunteers on Election Day, because they're talking. It's the volunteers are talking to half the number of voters that we need to cast a ballot. It's a force multiplier that Republicans don't have because Trump has poisoned them against early voting. So it's not only that you rack up more votes, it's also that you multiply the impact of what's going to happen later to get even more votes. And this is a key part of our path to victory in a state that I should just underscore is rigged for Republican control. We're the 47th worst state in the country to vote. We're sandwiched between Arkansas, Texas, Alabama, and Mississippi, right at the bottom of the list, because Republicans have decided that their path to winning is to stop Democrats from voting, not to persuade people. So we have to go above and beyond to win by a little bit in the current rules. If we win this election, if we ultimately get Democratic majorities in the state legislature, we could unrig this state, and it could create an extraordinary opportunity for progress.
I want to just put an exclamation point on something that Ben talked about, because for those who followed my election analysis last time and our post-election analysis, this issue of Democrats embracing the early vote, finally, right, in part because of COVID and other things, it means that, as Ben talked about, and because this is part of the reason we did so well in 2022, because of all of you and the money you're giving, our campaigns are bigger than they've ever been. We have more volunteers, more money, more grassroots organizers. And when people vote early, it means that, before the election, we're going down into second and third tier turnout targets, places that we never could get to before. Until 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Election Day, right? Which is, it's much better to be targeting and expanding your vote a week out, 10 days out, than it is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Election Day. And this is a sea change in the way that we operate as Democrats. It's one of the reasons, we outperformed all expectations in 2022. And this is now, I think what's happening, Ben, is that Democrats are becoming aware that if you vote early, you're creating more votes for Democrats. There's a direct connection now. And I did a lot of work on that last cycle. If you remember, I was out tweeting all the time, like, please vote early, you expand the electorate. And I think people understand that now. And this is a big problem for the Republican Party in the 2024 cycle. We are at least an election cycle ahead of them. And it's why, one of the reasons, Ben, I was saying before you came on, why I'd much rather be us than them heading into 2024. This is one of the main reasons. And it's in part because of all of you and the explosion of patriots and info warriors all around the country who've committed themselves to fight for their democracy. There's been a groundswell here in Wisconsin, but you're also getting help from all over the country. It's so amazing to see. It's a sign of the health of our democracy. And so thanks to all of you for everything you're doing. But I just gave Ben $250. Please give money to the Wisconsin Dems, and please do at least 1 or 2 shifts. It really could make a difference. Any final thoughts, Ben? Anything else you need to convey to us today?
I want to just flag 2 other elections that are happening that are also really significant. These are 2 of the 5 biggest cities in Wisconsin where there are Democratic mayors, and Republicans have targeted them with relentless election-denying conspiracy theories. They're both pitched battles. One is the Green Bay mayor, and the other is the Racine mayor. These elections will be affected by the Supreme Court race. So if we can win big in the Supreme Court race, it helps us to win the mayoral races in both of these cities. But Republicans are still doing the Bannon strategy of trying to get control of local offices so they can mess with the election administration in the next presidential race. So I want to heartily agree with everything you said. We have advanced beyond where Republicans are right now. They're still consumed by the civil war over whether Trump won or lost. It gives us a huge opportunity for progress in this next election. And the strength of our party, of our campaigns right now is really due to everyone on this Zoom, everyone watching the live screen, their friends, their family, the whole progressive movement that has decided to become the last line of defense for democracy, which was never inevitable. It has only happened because people have decided to make it their personal cause. But it goes up and down the ballot. We need to stay vigilant on local elections that are far from the national spotlight, not just the big marquee governor's races and Senate races, but also these local races that will have a huge impact on whether democracy lives in 2024 and lives for decades to come. So just to let an extra fire under the fire that I know is already lit for everyone who's watching, your work to help Wisconsin turn out voters right now is going to have an effect on things like how many early vote sites are open, or whether absentee ballots get unnecessarily thrown away for made-up reasons in 2024. And that could tip the entire presidential race one way or the other. I can't thank everyone enough for their dedication, for their work, for their contributions, for their volunteering. We have 7 days to go. Let's win, let's celebrate, and then let's roll up our sleeves for 2024.
And Ben, one last question. Is that money that people give will help in those mayoral races as well?
Absolutely. So we run a coordinated campaign. The Republicans aren't doing this, incidentally, for reasons I'll explain. But when we knock on doors, we talk about, you got to vote for Mayor Genrich, and you've got to vote for Janet Protasewicz for the state Supreme Court. And we reflect that in literature that we pass out. All the different pieces of our apparatus are integrated. The Republicans, all of their money right now, overwhelmingly, is flowing through dark money independent expenditure groups with undisclosed donors that are just focused on one race or another. So they're spending less efficiently. We're being outspent at this moment right now in Wisconsin in multiple races, including the Supreme Court, but our dollars are going further. And that's the thing that I find so exciting and energizing about where we are, is that we've figured out strategies that allow our money to be used more efficiently and allow us to win in races where, if you just looked on paper, you'd think we were doomed. And that's the opportunity we have in these local races and in the Supreme Court race right now.
Really important, about this idea of lowest unit rate. And, there's been a sea change in thinking in the Democratic Party. And I was involved in this in the DCCC in 2018. We made a historic change in 2018 in the DCCC to start helping our candidates raise much more money and to be less reliant on these outside groups. This is now how we're running all of our politics, and it's better. It's not a different system than Republicans, it's better. And all of you, frankly, it only works because of all of you and the money that you're giving and into the campaigns and the volunteerism that we're seeing, the explosion of volunteers across the country. which is giving us the most muscular campaigns that we've ever had in our lifetime, Ben, since we've been in this business. And it's exciting to see. And so, Ben, let me let you go. I'm really just grateful for you taking, I know how crazy you must be. You're a week out and got a lot on your shoulders, brother. And any final words and anything else we can do?
No matter how good things look or how bad things look, treat elections like you're half a point behind. It's the margin of effort. And if we pour everything we've got, then we can win. Sometimes we even win big. But the key thing is getting past that finish line. So all systems go. Thank you so much.
Ben, thank you. Good luck, brother. Bring it home.
Appreciate it.
We're staying on, everybody. If you want to just go into Q&A here. I really don't. I think we'll just shift now into the just general question and answer period. If folks want to go, that's fine. But I'm going to stay here till 2 and take your questions and see what's on people's minds. Let me, as you all know, there's a couple ways to ask questions. If you're on YouTube, we are going to be, Doodleen's going to be sending me some questions from YouTube for people who are watching live on YouTube. We also are here on Zoom. And let me just give me a second here to get myself organized. So let's just go into general questions. I thought I sent, it's the Wisconsin Democratic Party. You can just search on Google. It's WisDems. It's also in all the tweets and emails I've been sending. But it's the Wisconsin Democratic Party. That's who you want to give to, because Ben explained, and it's not true in every state, but in this state, the party, a lot of the campaign apparatus is being run through the party because of the nature of the law there. They can take unlimited contributions. The party apparatus in Wisconsin is enormous and strong and big, and Ben's a very, very able and capable leader. So your money and your volunteerism goes to help with the Supreme Court race and also the 2 mayor's races. Yes, this will be posted. I will say this gets posted on YouTube immediately afterwards if you want to share with anybody. And also it will be on the Hopium Chronicle site, within a few hours this afternoon. Dina, thanks for giving $50. I know some of you are talking about the work you've done. Just thank you, everybody. It really matters. And so let me just go to some questions. Julie just wrote, I just donated quick and easy. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, everybody, right, for doing this. And so Wisconsin Democrats, just look it up on Google and you can make it. I just don't want to, I want to talk to you. I don't want to worry about typing something in right now. I got a question about getting loud. What is getting loud? On our site, there is a button on Hopium Chronicles. You can click on it and talk, and it says getting loud, and it goes through and has resources for what it means. Here's to me what it means. And I started my career as a TV news producer and writer for ABC News. I grew up in the media business. The Republicans, through their investment in Fox News and OAN and talk radio and all these other things, they're just louder than we are. They have a lot of own media. Many years ago, they expanded the understanding of what politics was to include media. And so one of the people who got one of the first presidential awards from Donald Trump was Rush Limbaugh, right? A media personality who was part of the conservative and right-wing movement. And that has become, in a party that has had 2 former actors or TV stars become the leaders of their party, and certainly Reagan's victory, brought in a little bit of Hollywood into the Republican Party, that for that party where the media organizations have been brought into their understanding of what politics is, we're now at the point where Fox News is actually the party. The Republican Party today is a television network. The RNC is not nearly as powerful and important as Fox News is. They've redefined what is politics. As Democrats still look at the media as a place that we work. I was at NPR earlier today doing a political talk with some of the reporters there, and we work really hard to influence the independent media and we run our campaigns, but they have this other thing that we don't have, which is this 24/7, 365 propaganda apparatus that is very loud. It's very mature now. It's making a lot of money, and it's driving our daily discourse in America. And what I'm recommending to the family is that we have to keep doing these big campaigns like Ben and I just discussed, but we also have to do one other thing, which is we have to start really focusing on winning the daily information war and getting louder ourselves. One of the ways we get louder is I've been promoting lots of new organizations, our own media organizations like Deep State Radio and Courier Newsroom and Pod Save America and Resolute Square and Midas Touch. These are important new components of our Getting Loud strategy. But I think there's also a piece about what the war room can be. I'm a veteran of the war room in 1992. And when we think of the war room, it's 20 kids drinking Red Bulls, putting out videos, but we need to think of the war room as 2 or 3 million patriots every day getting up and spreading good information through their own personal networks, however that's comfortable, and as long as you don't become annoying to your friends and family, right, is to make sure that you can do it too. We need our elected officials to do more of it. Follow the work of Congressman Jeff Jackson, who's just been elected from North Carolina, a freshman member, is viewing himself as an information warrior, producing videos every day that are getting 500,000, 1 million views, right? There's so much more we can do to go on offense about our accomplishments and our agenda, to fill up the space, to make it harder for Republicans to push us around. But there's an urgency to this. And it's why I'm going to continue to talk about how there's all, that we all can get louder. And many of the grassroots groups, some of you are here today, I've spoken to groups, it's great to see how some of the grassroots groups that have sprung up to do elections and are now taking this idea of getting loud really seriously and learning the issues and putting out talking points and all the things and educating their community about our good works. It's a mindset. It's about going on offense. And so check it out. It's an important part of the journey here at Hopium Chronicles and the work that we're going to be doing together in the coming months. And certainly one of the reasons I've started Hopium Chronicles and the Substack is that we know that Twitter is degrading and that we're going to have to start thinking about how we all connect outside of Twitter. Most of my work in the last few years has been on Twitter, and I don't know how much longer that's going to be the case. So we've all got to be smart about this this transition that we're in, and making sure that even if Twitter's gone, that we don't lose a step in doing the work that we need to do. Lots of questions. Dudlene, do you have anything from, I got a question from Mahmoud on the Chicago's mayor's race. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have an opinion about that race. I haven't paid attention to it. I should have probably done my homework today a little bit to prepare, and I apologize for that. And but maybe if you follow me on Twitter or on Hopium, I will try to offer some thoughts about it in the next day or so. And April also asked, what do I think about the recent decision to create a parallel political Dem party in New York, given our recent disastrous elections? I'm not going to make any judgment yet on that project. However, it is important that the governor and the mayor and other leading Democrats in the state recognize that it's possible that because Democrats just always won elections in New York, that the political infrastructure underneath our politics in New York hasn't kept up with what's required and the innovations that have taken place, some of which we've talked about today. There should be a sense of urgency in New York about modernizing, about the poor performance that happened in this last election, and in modernizing our infrastructure in New York and building a modern campaign apparatus. If the party doesn't want to do it, then it should be done outside. It would be far better. I'm a believer in parties first. But if the party's not going to do it, then there should be efforts made. And I think what's interesting is that some of the most powerful grassroots groups that have emerged in the last few years are actually New York based, but they're doing a lot of their work outside of New York. And that would be another thing that I hope happens, that some of the New York Democrats really come to understand about the power and resources of the communities that are growing up in the New York area, to be able to be deployed not just in Wisconsin or in Ohio or in Georgia, but in also New York. And we've got 4 or 5 seats that we can win in the House We need to do better in New York. I was born in New York, and it's important. Most of my family lives in that area, and I still, and it's important. And I think part of it is just acknowledging and recognizing that we do have two most important political leaders in New York, other than the senators, are relatively new to their positions. And, we've got to put pressure on them to do what's required to make sure that we have a much better election in 2024 than we did in 2022. Let me go back to our chat here. Thank you, Dudeline, for bringing in our YouTube folks. So Ellen asked a great question, which is that Democrats are very fortunate with state leadership in some important states like Wisconsin and Georgia. How can we help build state parties elsewhere? So, I ran for national party chair in 2005. I had worked in presidential campaigns and understood how important the national party was. And I'm a believer that our politics really is party out. You can be a Democrat and do work and not be with the party, but the biggest organization we have, the biggest thing we have to do our politics is the DNC and the state parties. And I think it is important. We just had a 25-year-old elected in North Carolina as a new party chair. I think that having higher quality people who are like Ben, who can run elections and are tactical, and are powerful communicators, we need to put higher premium on building out modern parties. We also, look, two of the states, Arizona and Georgia, that have flipped and become Democratic in recent years happened in part because of very strong state-based leadership that changed the electorate, changed the politics in those states. The next state that we really need, our big expansion state this cycle, to me, is North Carolina. I mean, North Carolina, since 2004, 6 states have gone from Republican to Democrat. It's been Virginia and Georgia and in the New South, and the 4 southwestern states of Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico. North Carolina is sort of sitting there in between Georgia and Virginia, and we've got to go flip that this time. I know the Biden folks are talking about competing in Florida. I don't think they're going to give up on Florida. There just aren't enough states to give up on anything, right? But certainly I think that if we can try to do what we did in Arizona and Georgia with a 24/7 always on organizing model in North Carolina, I think we can, see really good things happen there. And it's certainly, I'm optimistic about that in this cycle. Let me just see. Okay. Hey, Lenny, Kelly raises a really important point I want to make. Ciao from Italy, Simon. Kelly, you should know my son is living in Rome and studying in Rome, and I think he's the luckiest 20-year-old in the world. But just a reminder to all participants that if they know U.S. citizens living or studying abroad, they can definitely vote. There are 6.5 million of us living abroad, but only 10% of those vote. The overseas vote can help us get to 55. She's right about that. And Kelly, I need to add that to my list, by the way. Thank you for that reminder. Expats need to go to www.votefromabroad.org and to register and request their overseas ballots. This is really important. It's oftentimes that people may be temporarily overseas. You do have people who are, living overseas for a much longer time. The people who tend not to vote are people who are in a temporary place in their lives where they've gone to a new state and they don't really know the voting ways, or they're moving around. And so what Kelly's describing here is that there are millions of potential Democratic votes overseas that, and as Kelly is aware, the DNC in this last cycle for the first time gave and funded GOTV operations with the Democrats abroad, and it's a very good hopeful sign that in this next election this will be a priority for the Biden re-election in a way that it hasn't been in many previous presidential elections. The congressman who's putting out the amazing videos is his name is Jeff Jackson, and all of you should get to know him. And we know that AOC is a powerful communicator online, and she's a breakthrough young talent for us. Jeff, who is a freshman from North Carolina, I'm going to have him on here, by the way. We've been in touch with each other. I'm going to start doing more events like this, there'll be probably a weekly event with a policymaker, elected official for us going forward. Jeff will be on soon, and Sarah Marshall asks about the Florida Democratic Party. Yeah, look, I was just in an interview where we talked about Florida for quite a bit, and I've worked a lot in Florida over the years. I mean, I helped develop the Hispanic strategy in Florida some time ago. I mean, Barack Obama not only won the Hispanic vote in 2012, he won the Cuban vote in 2012. We've fallen way back in Florida. I don't think it's a permanent thing. It could be a long time. This could be a 10 or 20 year rebuilding process, but it's also possible that DeSantis screwed up his positioning in this election. I can't tell you, as somebody who's looked at data and studied elections for 30 years, how much of a mistake I think DeSantis has made about his positioning relative to the rest of the electorate, and even potentially relative to the Florida electorate. I think that they made some decisions back in the fall when everyone thought the red wave was coming and it was going to be a big rout, and that he had to finish the book, and they committed to an extreme agenda that made him more extreme than he was before. He's gone to permitless carry, which in a state like Florida is hard to even really imagine. He's terrorizing undocumented immigrants in sort of unprecedented and extraordinarily cruel ways. And I'm not talking about the plane to Martha's Vineyard. His agenda is a next generation manifestation of MAGA. He's a dangerous candidate. He is as loathsome and despicable and ugly as Donald Trump, and we cannot allow it for one moment for there to be any distance in our understanding of the two of them. He's also, I think, not really good at politics. I mean, one of the things that I just was struck by that sort of blew my mind is based on the research I've done, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. In all the years that he's been governor of Florida and been a member of Congress, he's only traveled to one country outside the United States. He's gone to Israel. He's never done a Latin American trip as as governor of Florida. My friend texted me and said his foreign trips are to Miami, right, not to Latin America. And given the centrality of, Miami is often described as the capital of Latin America. I think that I'm talking among elites here, right? Not just everyday people, but that sense of staying inside the MAGA Republican bubble and being so desperate to not expose himself to contrary ideas is one of the reasons I think DeSantis is going to fail. He's just not ready. He's not mature enough. He didn't do what was required, put himself in a position to win in battlegrounds that have voted against MAGA in 3 consecutive elections. He's going to be all sorts of MAGA, and we can't for a moment allow our Republican friends who have this fantasy that he's somehow going to just be a normal country club Republican. We're way past that. The die is cast. He's thrown his lot in with extremism, and we need to lump him in with Trump. He and Trump, I think what's happened to the Republican Party right now is that, if you're just an average person, you're like, hey, Trump was kind of crazy, but he's going to be gone someday. But now there's another crazy guy. So it's like, holy moly, this is really a scary party. And I think the two of them together gives us a lot of ammunition to define them as being out of the mainstream in order to create space for us to get to 55 and, crush them in this next election. I'm very bullish in where things are right now, just personally, and excited about this election cycle. It's great to hear from Ben, by the way. Wasn't he impressive? He's a phenomenal guy. And he says, Twitter replacements, Mastodon posts, spoutable. They don't have critical mass. Annie, I'm going to have I have this belief, and I'm going to be proven wrong possibly, that we're not going to have Twitter again. I think we're going to go to a whole new world. I don't know what that world is. One of the reasons I'm on Substack is I think Substack's actually part of this next thing. It's a very powerful platform, very interactive. It's going full on multimedia. It's rolling out all sorts of new pieces of it in the coming months. Very impressed with Substack as one of the new pieces. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know that we're going to go back to a social media model. I just don't No, but I will say that one of the most important things we have to do here together is work together to restore a degree of integrity to our daily discourse. That, the Republicans have corrupted and poisoned our discourse. So have the Russians, so have other outside governments. And one of our national priorities has to be to restore the integrity of our discourse around new media environment, new media tools. This is going to be a policy and political agenda. It's not any one thing, but we are living in a world of, essentially, if this was a public health model, there's been, we have ill health here in America, ill information health, and we've got to restore it together. This is going to be a major part of our work here. I don't think we really have the language and vocabulary to describe what we're really talking about here. In Europe, they do. They're much further along in thinking about information integrity and discourse integrity than we are here. And I can tell you, as a dad of a 17-year-old young teenage girl, these issues of, or young woman, I should say, she'll whack me in the side of the head for that one, that these issues around social media and teen depression and all this stuff is very, very real. It is. So any of you who've been around teenagers in recent years, whether as a parent or as a teacher, or as somebody, a coach or anything, this is very real stuff. The data is very clear here. We're in a public health crisis with young Americans. And so not only do we have to protect them from gun violence, we have to make significant strides in restoring a degree of integrity to our information systems and discourse every day. I don't think we will have the kind of democracy that we want unless we're able to do that together in the coming years. And so this is something we'll be talking about a lot here. I've already written extensively about it on Hopium, and we'll continue to engage on this in the coming months. Let me just see if there's any other. Lenny, you got a bunch of Lenny. I'll be in touch. You got lots of ideas here, and Lenny, as always, the fertile mind of my old friend Lenny Glynn. Thanks, brother, for being here. I think, Dudlene, any other questions from YouTube? Let me just see. Let me go to you. And I'm sorry that I can't see both at the same time. Paul Joseph Brown asked, there are only a handful of well-run state parties. Listen, the issue of, Paul, I know this is something of enormous interest to you, and I'll give a brief answer to this, and I know we're going to talk at some point in the next few weeks, but the challenge that we have with the party is that it's often either controlled by a governor or a president, and we're sort of dependent upon them putting in a capable team into the party for all of us. Or oftentimes when we don't have a president or we don't have a governor, the party is often not empowered to do the things that are required because the various tribes of the family haven't really settled on a common course, right? And so the party is this remarkable thing that is, I think that the donors in the Democratic Party over the last 15 to 20 years have dramatically misunderstood the centrality of the party to everything that we're doing. And I think that we have spun off a lot of organizations that is our work that have historically been done by the party. And by doing that, we've weakened the party inside the family. It's become smaller and leaner with a narrower objective. Some people may believe that's a good idea. I don't think it is, actually. I mean, I don't like what's happened to the Democratic Party apparatus. I think it needs to be seen as the most important set of tools that we have. And it just isn't, right? It just isn't. It's not where it is now. I think that's a mistake in the family. And I think it's why I love Jamie Harrison. I mean, Jamie was the state party chair and then he ran for Senate. Jamie knows this business well. But you're right, Paul, that we need to put a much higher premium on training the upper tier of the party teams, the comms directors, the executive directors, the political staff, and creating these 24/7, 365 always on political and communications apparatuses. We just don't have that. Some of it is financial, but I also believe that we're now living in a time of plenty and scarcity. Things have changed in the Democratic Party. We have a lot of money now, and we have to think differently about how we conduct our politics, because We are not living in a time of scarcity any longer. And if I could wave my magic wand and sort of do any one thing, would be strengthening the national and state party. It has the greatest impact. And certainly one of the things, Paul, is that guys like Ben, or people like me, we need to be doing more hands-on training with the new people that are coming up. There needs to be more teachers teaching the teachers kind of stuff to sort of accelerate this. I will say, let me just close with one last thing on this, is that Jen O'Malley Dillon, who is in essence the chief political person for Joe Biden, grew up as a field organizer. She's a party person. She's a warrior. And she has brought a level of intensity around field organizing that is consistent with how Obama did it, maybe even taking it to another level. The DNC put unprecedented amounts of money into the state party field organizations last cycle. It's one of the reasons our turnout was so strong, was that there was an unprecedented effort. And it was exciting. And I think that I just want to close, because we're getting to time. I want to just close how I began, which is that last cycle we were defensive and down, and we were worried and nervous, and went into a defensive crouch far too often. I tried to get people out of that, to get people to go on offense, to believe, as Ted Lasso would say, that we could do it, and that was a close competitive election, and we all had to leave it on the playing field. This cycle, we have to, I think, approach our politics in this way. Joe Biden's been a good president. The country is better off. The Democratic Party is strong. Our grassroots are stronger than they've ever been. We are in control of our own destiny in the battlegrounds. I would much rather be us than them. They've gone really crazy and have a serial criminal who's betrayed his country, potentially as their nominee. People understand what MAGA is. I think this cycle is about expansion, about offense, about being confident and strong and being proud of what we've done. We need to shake that doubt that came into our family last time. We're strong, we're good, we're going to get it done, we're going to save the country. That's what we're going to do together, everybody. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Thanks for being here. Thanks to Ben and his team. God bless them, and make sure you're doing your calls and giving your money there. It will really matter if we win next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.